I did mention that there are a lot of different ways of testing. There are certain companies that use bug bounty as the only way of testing it. And then but majority of them, what they do is that internally they do their testing and then they ship the product and then they put it on the program so that they can actually test the final product. And then some people, like, if you are in a highly regulated environment like health, then they put a stage environment with fake data, and then they put that on the public bug bounty program so that they can start testing. So who is using it? I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, you could think it of as there are key different angles you could look at it. There are ones with the most sensitive information. There are ones with the highest budgets for internal testing. There are ones with the most skilled engineers, most skilled employees on security, the ones that have actually invented certain security testing, right? So one would ask the question, why would anyone want to use bug bounties for these people, right? To ask help from the public, right? And then the companies with the highest funding, the biggest resources, they have enough funding, they could just do red teaming every day if they want to, right? Why do they need help from bug bounties or help from public? And last, the ones with the most um, sensitive resources, can they trust it? I mean, can't they do something else rather than asking help from bug bounty? The answer is yes. They still need bug bounties. They still need help from the publics, because security testing is something that you can never be, done on a day, or you cannot do it enough. You need to do as much as possible. And then even the entities like Pentagon, since they initially introduced it, they have fixed thousands of vulnerabilities. You can imagine the employees, skills of the employees in these networks, right? But public, they still could find it. And then there's a famous bug hunter called Jack Cable. I think he was 16 or 17 when he found bunch of highly critical vulnerabilities in Pentagon. The simple truth is that you need to have a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of perspective to find the most creative, most critical vulnerabilities. That's what bug bounty is bringing into your organization. I mean, so Google, Microsoft, Morgan Chase, they have billions of dollars, highly skilled, highly resourceful. They still use help, bug bounties, and then they are successful. That's why they keep on using it. And Google has been using it, bug bounties, for like more than a decade now. Yeah. And then even early stage startups, we've spoken with a lot of early stage. How this bug bounty help early stage startups, especially with Bug Zero, is that I mean, so far within the short period of time that Bug Zero is on publicly helping organizations, when they get a report, when a bug hunter find a report, Bug Zero actually help them with figuring out whether this is valid, figuring out how through bug hunter. So that's a lot of resources being sort of accommodated through Bug Zero for your organization. So for early stage startups, Bug Zero or generally bug hunting is pretty attractive, given that bug hunters will take care of a lot of human work involved in this chain. And then Bug Zero, it is free for startups. I mean, you don't have to worry about paying for any bug hunters for startups. There's a public program where the ones that I mentioned so far. You just create a program, and then everyone involved registered on the platform will start testing. There's a private program and a private private programs means that you create your account on a bug bounty platform, and then you choose who you want to invite. So not everyone will see your program, only invitees will. It could be, you pick up certain, you say you want testers only from Europe, you want testers only from US or from Sri Lanka. So the bug bounty platforms will do that, and then um, uh, invite them. A private event is what the US military is doing, is that you invite all of them to your premise and then carry out the testing so that you know what's happening, or you can make sure nothing leaves the network. So why does bug bounty is important? There's a recent White House directive that mandating bug bounty or vulnerability disclosure programs for supply chain. So if you are a product company that's delivering product, or service company giving something, you need to have these bug bounties in the future. They haven't started regulating it, but they will soon. So it's coming as a requirement. It won't be just an optional choice anymore in the future. And then bug zero, we have 750 plus bug hunters from 40 countries. And then so the biggest misconception on bug bounties is that we have threat intel, we have compliance checks, we have all the firewalls. Do we need bug hunting? Yes, you still need bug hunting, because you need extra eyes, fresh perspective to find the critical vulnerabilities. And then it has been proven over a decade or so, even through biggest tech names with the biggest internal testing teams. And then the last one, the biggest question is that, can I trust the human? You are trusting, when you do external testing engagement, you are still trusting them. Just because you sign an NDA, it doesn't guarantee that they will go around and sell low vulnerability. So there is nothing different from here. If you want to verify the identities of these bug hunters, most of the platforms do it. Bug Zero do it. And then historically speaking, there's only like 1 or 2 cases that happened over a decade or so. If you look at other testing environments, engagement, I think there are more cases that's someone leaking the information. And then the other question is that, aren't I exposing extra information? You are not. You are just posting information already public. We are not asking people to expose internal endpoints. It doesn't make sense that no one can actually test it. But you are posing in something that's already out there, that's something already public, so you are not exposing anything new. And the economics of security is that there will always be people poking at your system. There'll be always malicious people, and when you expose something, put something on a bug bounty platform, there are like hundreds of people trying to defend you versus maybe 1 or 2 people trying to attack you. So mathematically speaking, you have good odds of defending your system. And then especially when you decide how much you want to pay, you need to understand what's the market, what's the motive. Someone find a vulnerability and then sell it on the market, whereas getting paid through you. So if they can actually get a bigger reward through you than actually selling it on the black market, they will definitely come into you. That's why when we tell our clients that for the paying clients, that they need to figure out a good amount, that's actually sort of offset any, if they have any sort of even a thought of selling it underground, they won't do it, because they can get a higher amount through you. And then most of the demand for Sri Lankan accounts are pretty low in underground. So, you don't have to pay a ridiculously high amount. Just a decent amount will make sure that um, they will keep on coming to your system. And then, as I said earlier, there are a lot of things that Bug Zero does to make sure that there won't be any leakage. So all the vulnerability reports are highly confidential. No one can access it apart from you, if not even anyone from Bug Zero. And then there are private programs, private events, and we do verification. And then there are in scope and out scope. Like, when you publish your program, you can tell them these are the in scope ones. These are the assets endpoints that I want to get tested, and there are out of scopes on the assets or endpoints that you don't want to get tested. So if someone reports it, if it is a critical, you can still trade it, but you are not compelled to pay them. So talking about Bug Zero, I think we came out of stealth in May. Since that, we've had we now have like 750 plus bug hunters from 40 different countries. We add like 15 new bug hunters every week or so. We have paid more than 1.4 million rupees, and on average, that somewhere around 22,000 rupees per report. And there were cases where we paid more than 75,000 for critical vulnerabilities. Our bug hunters have found more than 350 critical vulnerabilities so far. And then clients have fixed, I think, pretty much 1/5 of them. I mean, it is, I mean, as any country, having a vibrant local security ecosystem is really important. It saves foreign exchanges. It create good talent. It create a good skilled talent. And then, it could eventually be a good source of export market as well. So, that's why we advocate to have a vibrant bug hunting ecosystem. We are not advocating that they should join Bug Zero. If you join Bug Zero, that will be the best, but there are a lot of other options as well. But we would like to have a local ecosystem, so that it helps local organizations. It will help people going abroad for security advice or security help. You can fix all of it locally as well. Yeah, so if you have any questions, email us. I mean, for organizations, big organizations, we have 3 months, but for startups, it's all free. And then that's our email, our website, my Twitter handle as well. Please reach out. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take it on right now. I think if not, I think Nipuna will take it from here.
Thank you, Dr. Pal. I think let's wait like 2, 3 few minutes so that our participant can add some of their questions to the chat, and if they want to speak, we can unmute them. If you want to ask some questions, now it's the time.
Anyways, you can email us anytime you want. I mean, you can just post question anytime during the session as well. I think
So
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
start.
Let's start with my presentation. Uh, so Good morning to you, everyone. I'm Entrepreneurship from Bug Zero. Today, I will talk about how we are going to secure our web applications from the organization's point of view. If you turn into our earlier sessions, you might have learned how to see web applications as the hacker's point of view. But today, yeah, changing the pace and look at the security from the organization perspective. So let me share the screen first. So before we are moving on to the session, this is our session agenda. So first of all, I would like to describe our platform, like show how we are going to start from organizations account, and then how do we move on to getting actual reports. And then I will describe to think like an hacker, how to, when we are building software, we need to think like a hacker, because if we are thinking like a web developer, we might lose some insights when if we are not thinking like a hacker. Finally, I will use that like the thought pattern as a hacker to do some kind of an actual web application hacking as a demonstration. So first, let's move on to the demonstration of Bug Zero. So in Bug Zero, you can register as a hacker and register as an organization. For the previous sessions, I described how to register as a hacker, but in this session, we will discuss about how to register as an organization user and set up a bug bounty platform. There are some few steps to set up a bug bounty platform in Bug Zero. So there's something called policy and scope. I will discuss what is a program policy and how to fine tune your program scope to get more vulnerable reports. And I will discuss how to handle vulnerable reports and how what are the steps in this bug bounty cycle. As a complete end-to-end support in Bug Zero, we provide the support for the complete bug bounty cycle. So finally, I will discuss about tips to keep receiving reports, because we have like this experience, like when we are first creating this program and making it public to the world. In the first few months, we will get like hundreds of reports, but then eventually the interesting people will get dropped. So to avoid that, to keep getting vulnerable reports, there are some tips that we need to discuss. Of course, if your software is getting better and better and having less vulnerabilities, that's a good thing as well. But another experience tells us that no such thing called like complete security. Your software will get vulnerable over the time, because you are adding new features, you are updating the software, and you might forget to update some packages or some libraries, so they will become stale and they might leave some vulnerabilities in the software. So you need to continuously receiving vulnerable reports, and you need to continuously fix these vulnerabilities, and you need to continuously engaging with these vulnerability bug bounty hunters. We are calling them as hackers. So I will now show you a demonstration in Bug Zero. So this is our URL. I will share the link with you now. You can visit our platform. So once you visit our platform, this our homepage, you can get some kind of a basic understanding about what we are doing here. And then we can, if you want, you can join as a hacker and play around with our programs. That's no problem. But if now, since this a session more generated towards the startups who are working with this software and other ecosystems, let's create a program and let's see how we are going to set up a bug bounty program, and let's discuss the basic notion of what is a bug bounty program. So in here, I will use this imaginary corporation. Let's see, like abc.com. We have a web, let's say we have a company called ABC Incorporated. So all you have to do is set up the name as ABC Inc. or something, your own company. So we will automatically generate your organization's handle, which will be used to uniquely identify your organization. And we need your own handle, like the person who handle this organization account. Like there is some rule of thumb, like we use this notion called use some part of your organization handle, and you can use the support handle. So for this, you can use as your handle ABC support. So in that way, the hacker knows that this account is who are interacting with them is ABC support. So for the website, we need your website so that we can publicly announce that this is the organization, because bc.com, and we need your email and your registered country that the organization is, and some passwords. So we have this kind of terms and conditions for programs where you are abiding in some of the terms of conduct and conditions in bug zero is that you are allowing the hacker to some set of guidelines and some set of scopes, like targets. What I will discuss in few minutes. So you are allowing these assets to be continuously tested by these hackers, and you are allowing them to engage with these systems so that they can find vulnerabilities. So that's the basic agreement between you and the hacker, and you and us, our bug zero. So if you have any question, you can ask them in the chat, or you can raise your hand. So once we create the program, you have to click on the create program button. You will receive an verification link in the email. You can click it, just the same steps in any other platform. So for the time being, I will log into this as bug zero. So you would get some kind of inside information, how our bug zero platform is working. So once you log into the platform for the first time, you can visit program settings. You can use this, go to organizations, program settings. Then we need, as the bug zero platform, we need these following information from you. We need your profile picture, the organization profile picture, which will be uniquely identified by the hacker, because it can be used to like for marketing purposes and promotional. We can use this profile picture, and it should like we usually guide you to upload your own logo here, because we have uploaded our own logo here. So once you add the name, we don't allow you to change the name or the handle. It's basically because the integrity of the platform, because if you have changed the name of your organization, no problem, you can archive this program and create a new program, because in order to maintain the integrity of the platform, we do not change your name, because that's why we are mentioning it as when you are entering the name, it will be used to create the handle. So they are basically making your organization unique. So that's some kind of information that that you need to keep in mind. Other than that, you can add the website. These fields are mandatory, because we need to verify that your organization is a real organization, because in that way, like we have to verify who's behind this program. Like we need like, because we are basically promoting your organization on behalf of you. So we need your LinkedIn handle and your Twitter handle, and if you have a GitHub account which uses some kind, which you host some kind of public source code, that would be better, and you can add the GitHub organization here as well. And in here you can add some kind of a simple introduction to your organization. So after you fill this organization information, you can click update, and that would be done by you from this side. So in user management or group management, you don't at the first time when you are using this program, when you set up in your bug bounty program, you don't have to worry about user management and group management, because it's created towards more advanced usage of the bug bounty program. At the first stage, you don't need to use that. And once you complete this information tab in this dashboard, you can move on to the programs tab. In here, the programs policy is the most important part of your bug bounty program. So here I will show you our bug zeros program policy, so that you can get some kind of an understanding about how a bug bounty program policy is going to work in your favor. So this is the basic homepage of bug zero. If you create your own program, you have your own program homepage. So in this homepage, you have the policy. So in this policy, what you are mentioning is the disclosure policy, like how the vulnerabilities are disclosed to the public. So in reality, when one hacker has identified your vulnerability, and they will send you a report. So once you validate that report, you have to fix that vulnerability, because if you are ignoring that report, there is no point in using this kind of setup. So you have to fix that vulnerability and communicate with the hacker and check whether the vulnerability is fixed from their side as well. Finally, you can choose to make this vulnerability public, because in bug zero we believe in complete transparency, and in reality in the world as well, they usually found vulnerability, and if they fixed it, they would make a public disclosure, because some public organizations required that them to acknowledge that there was a vulnerability and they have fixed it. So this disclosure policy mentions how the vulnerability disclosure is done. So in the next section, we mention the exclusions. This is where you say, don't do this kind of attacks or testing types in our platform, in our own platforms or own systems, APIs, things like that, to test for vulnerabilities. You can say, do not do DOS attacks, do not do spamming, do not do social engineering attacks, and do not do any kind of physical attacks against their platforms. So in here, we have mentioned this out of scope finding in bug zero. Most of the websites, these vulnerabilities can be identified easily. For any novice bug bounty hunter, if they if they search on the YouTube, what are the most frequent vulnerabilities to find to get some easy bug bounty, they would find that they can check if there is an email spoofing, SSL/TLS certificate issues, rate limiting issues, things like that. For as bug zero, we have already found these vulnerabilities in our platform and we have fixed them. So we don't ask, we ask the vulnerability reporters, the bug hunters, to do not waste their time on trying to find these vulnerabilities, because we have already fixed these vulnerabilities. So it is not mandatory to use these kind of things in your policy as well. But if you know that if your program is already have fixed these vulnerabilities in your own websites or APIs, things like that, you can mention that in the policy that please do not try to find these vulnerabilities because they are out of scope. So finally, we can set that the eligibility. In the eligibility means we basically say that the report should be unique and the reports should be done in the assets that are on the scope, and the report should clearly define the reproducible steps of that vulnerability. And the most important aspect is that the hacker should not, and hacker must not disclose the vulnerability before you agree to disclose that vulnerability. The hacker is abiding by this rule. I mean, they are agreeing to these rules when they are signing up to this platform. And if the hacker has uh, is not abiding by this rule, we can it disqualifies them from getting an bug bounty. So finally, you can mention the safe harbor. Safe harbor means it can the testers might find vulnerabilities outside of the scope, like they might find some kind of vulnerability in a uh, library that or package that you use. So in safe harbor guarantees each tester's legal protection. You can see that the safe harbor laws in United States and European Union. So we are trying to bring that safe harbor facilities into our platform as well. So I will move back to these scopes in a bit. For right now, now we know how the policy works, and now we know what is the safe harbor. There are three kinds of safe harbor provisioning: full safe harbor provisioning, partial safe harbor provisioning, or none. You can select either one at your own discretion. There is no issue with that. So once we completed this policy page, we can move to the scope. Now I will move back to this and show you what are scopes. So scopes mean that there are two kinds of scopes: in scope and out of scope. In scope means the targets that you have selected that you are going to allow these uh, vulnerability testers to test against. So in this example, our own domain bugzero.io is hosted on our own servers. So it is eligible for bounty, and we are allowing the hackers to test this against for vulnerabilities. And we mentioned that this type is domain. We add the domain identifier, and we say what is the severity of this asset, and we say that this is eligible for bounty. So in reference, we usually add some kind of a blog article or an API. If this API, we can add a Swagger API documentation or some kind of a documentation about the asset that mentions hackers to what to do and what not to do. So in out of scope, we can set that these do not test these assets. So blog.bugzero.io is hosted on the Medium servers. It's a Medium publication. So we do not have any authority to test on that. So it's in that way we are making it out of scope, because we do not want testers to test the blog.bugzero.io because it has this domain called bugzero.io. So in here you can see how to add in scope and out scope. I will show you here. We can when we click on that target, you can see there are several types as a target. We can select domain, an iOS app, an Android app, a Windows app, source code. When we are mentioning a source code, we can add a GitHub source code, Bitbucket source code, or GitLab source code. So basically, when we are adding this source code, it should be a public source code, because we are asking the hackers to trying to find vulnerabilities in that source code as a public repository. But if you want to add some kind of a private repository, we can facilitate that as well. But for the time being, I'm discussing about the public source code. And if you have some kind of hardware or IoT, you can add them as well. Or if you have any other which is not mentioned here, we can add that as well. So for a domain, you can add the domain name here. When we add the domain, we can select this as eligible submission in scope if you want this asset to be tested for vulnerabilities, or out of scope if you do not want anyone to find vulnerabilities in this. So in scope, you can check here that this vulnerability, if you find some vulnerability and report it, it is eligible for bounty, and you can select the threat level here. I will give you some kind of an example to select how can we select the threat level. Let's say you host your own home page, like a static website in GitHub pages. So you add this as an asset in scope, but if there is some kind of vulnerability in this platform, I mean this static page, the vulnerability is basically is on uh, GitHub pages. So you can say it doesn't give the if that vulnerability is exploited, there won't be some kind of a privilege escalation, or the hacker won't be able to get hold to the hacker like your own infrastructure. So you can say this vulnerability threat level is like medium or low. But if you add an WordPress in your own system, in your in-house servers, you have a WordPress server. So in that WordPress server, you mention that in this as an in scope asset. So once if you try, if an hacker find a vulnerability in this asset, you can say that if there is some kind of privilege escalation, the hacker can get hold of your own in-house server. So in that way, you can mention it here as the threat level as critical. So I think that would give some kind of an understanding on how to select the threat level for your own assets. So you can add a reference here, or you can add instructions here as well. But we prefer like the instruction is like markdown. It's limitedly stylized, but if you can add some kind of Google Doc or some kind of Medium article or blog or a Swagger Open API documentation, it would be much clearer to the hacker. So we encourage you to add some kind of a reference in this as a link in here. Once you completed this form, you can submit the form. So that's how you add the scope. So you don't have to actually worry about what is the submit report, how to change the submit report form. So submit report form is basically this general notion that we need this kind of description in the vulnerability report. So when a hacker is creating a vulnerability report, they need to give some kind of a general overview of the vulnerability. And most importantly, they need to mention how the vulnerability can be reproduced from the organization side. So they can add the step 1, step 2, step 3, and the final steps to how to recreate the vulnerability from the organization side. Finally, sometimes hackers do not create these steps clearly, but they will attach you some kind of an attachment like a screen recording or screenshots, so that you can view that video or the screenshot and you can recreate the vulnerability from your own side easily. So we encourage the hackers to add steps in written form and add screenshots and videos as well. So it would help you in recreating and validating the vulnerability report. So when we are creating a vulnerability report from the hacker's point of view, they need to discuss how this vulnerability can be exploited and how much impactful the exploitation would be. So in that way, you need to create some kind of an impact template, but you don't have to change this template. You can leave it as it is, because most of the impact templates work like this. So we ask the hacker to complete this. We ask the hacker what kind of threat or risk to the target, the threat and the risk level, and how who else that does it affect. So for example, if there is an cross-site scripting vulnerability in your dashboard, and it can lead to complete account takeover. So in that way, if I find a cross-site scripting vulnerability in your dashboard, I can say as an hacker, what kind of threat or risk to the target. This cluster shifting vulnerability in the dashboard can lead to complete account takeover. The threat or risk level is critical. And who else does it affect? It affects to the organization reputation as well as the security of the data of the user. So we can see that impact by reading this report, and we can get immediate understanding about this vulnerability, and we have to take immediate remediational actions. So finally, we can create this rewards. So if you are going to give bug bounty, in this example, we are going to award bug bounties on behalf of you for this next few months. So you can click on this and activate it, and you can set up the minimum bug bounty as $5. There is no problem with that. So then you can at some bug bounty programs prefer to give swags like stickers, t-shirts, and things like that. So you can in here we mentioned swag as the t-shirts, so we can add the swag details, like if you have your own t-shirts to give out to the bug bounty hunters, you can add their size chart. And Hall of Fame means you can activate Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame means let me show you Hall of Fame. Like Hall of Fame basically means that the hackers who have uh, found vulnerabilities in your program. In here we can see this person has is the top in this Hall of Fame. He has obtained 6100 0 points, and this like this you can see how many people have found vulnerabilities, and we have given them Hall of Fame. So in that way, once you completed these 4 forms, you can move on to program setup. Now you can say that the policy is done, the scope is done, and the rewards tab is done, and the profile tab is done. If we can see these 4 steps are done, you can submit for bug zero approval, and we will review your program. If there is some kind of problem with your policy, or if you need if you need like some kind of a clarification, we can give you as well. So we will review all of these steps, and finally, if there is no problem, no issue with your program, we will verify it, and from that onwards, your program will be live on this. Your program will be live on our programs tab. So you can see here, we currently have few very famous names you might have heard. We have Helakuru, Pay here, and the Basha, and Citadel, our own program Bug Zero, and Root Sona, and the Sri Lanka cert as well. So if we move on to this Helakuru bug bounty program, you can see it follows the same policy as our own policy. Also, they have this their own Hall of Fame as well, and you can see that they have some kind of extra criteria for them as well. See, you can see that they have at their Helakuru Android application, Helakuru Lite Android application, Helakuru iOS application, and then they have mentioned the specifics that should not be done for their applications, like they ask not to do DOS attacks, spamming, phishing, or social engineering attacks, and they have mentioned the criterion that considered for paying a bug bounty. And in here you can see that the Helakuru has added these in scope assets. You can see that they have add this reference. If we move on to this website, we can see that it has the entire knowledge base on how to these applications work, and the hackers will use this knowledge to find vulnerabilities, and this will be really helpful for them to find vulnerabilities in this asset. So That's the basics of program setup. So finally, once you are public on our platform, you will receive immediately. You will receive vulnerability reports because we have a very active community of bug bounty hunters. But from our side, we will give you free promotion and free marketing of your program, so you don't have to worry about that from your end. And so let's move on to handling vulnerability reports when you might receive after you set up your bug bounty program. So for this, I will demonstrate how vulnerability reports are submitted and how vulnerability reports are handled from our end. For that, let's use our own bug zero program, and I will use my personal bug zero account to log into this system, and I will create a dummy bug report in some kind of dummy asset, and then I will show you the entire bug bounty cycle. So for that, let me reiterate the bug bounty cycle. So first, we have this hacker. Then we have your organization. How we are the bug zero is like a marketplace who connecting hacker and organizations. So in the middle we have bug zero. So the hacker will know which programs to look for vulnerabilities, and organizations know if they list their programs in our bug zero platform, the hackers will go over their programs and find vulnerabilities in their assets. So the entire bug bounty cycle is as follows. So first, hacker visits this our platform and visit those programs that I mentioned earlier. So if they select your program, they will go over the assets list, and they, let's say we have a asset called abc.com. So the hacker sees abc.com web application. In this web application, the hacker try to find several vulnerabilities, like they have using some kind of pre created methodologies to find vulnerabilities in web applications. So in this way, let's suppose there is some kind of vulnerability. Let's say there is a process shifting vulnerability. In this website. So once we find the process shifting vulnerability as the hacker, they will go to your bug bound program and they will submit the vulnerability. So from that onwards starts the entire bug bounty cycle. First, the hacker would submit the vulnerability report. And you will receive immediately a message, an email about there is a vulnerability report submitted to your organization. So once you view the vulnerability report, you can interact with the hacker and start on validating the vulnerability and triaging the vulnerability, and then fixing the vulnerability, and finally closing the report. And then you can award a bug bounty for the hackers' efforts. We need to appreciate the hackers' report because they are using their own effort to find this vulnerability, and they are not going to exploit it. They are not going to get some kind of monetary gain from finding this vulnerability. So we need to compensate their effort by giving a bug bounty. So the next step is you need to validate, then triage, then fix, retest, close. Finally, after we are closing the vulnerability reports and obtaining some kind of an agreement between the hacker and your organization, whether this vulnerability report should be disclosed to the public or not, finally, we can disclose the report. So let's see how this entire bug bounty cycle is how this completed in Bug Zero platform. So for this, let's go to programs. I'm going to submit a report to our own Bug Zero program. That way, I can demonstrate how it is done. So you can see for the moment, I will say that there is a cross-site scripting vulnerability in bug0.io. So we are going to select this as cross-site scripting vulnerability. So I say the threat level is critical, and since I'm a beginner bug bounty hunter, I'm not going to worry about this CVSS scores, and I'm going to just say that this vulnerability threat level is critical. If I'm a veteran bug bounty hunter, I would definitely select these attack vectors and attack complexity, privilege requires, user interaction, and the scope, change to unchanged, confidentiality, integrity, availability, things like that. So for right now, I'm just selecting threat level as critical. So next, I will add a report title. A report title is we like to call it as some kind of an email subject. It's analogous to email subject because email subject should be short, but it should be informative about. It should give some kind of a introduction that we are going to read this kind of email. So just like in this report title, we have to create it simple, but we need to be informative. For this, I will say there is a cross-site scripting vulnerability in bug0.io dashboard. So let's say for short form is cross-site scripting is XSS. So I will say XSS vulnerability in zero. So once the organization reads this report, they know that there is a cross-site scripting vulnerability in bug0 dashboard. So in the issue description, I will say there is a excess vulnerability in dashboard. Now we need to, as a hacker, now we need to add some kind of a POC to reproduce the vulnerability. So I say login to platform, go to dashboard, and I will show you some kind of a simple exploit. So we will say insert this. Insert this as the exploit. So if the organization read this report, they can see that there is an excessive vulnerability in Bug0 dashboard. And here are the steps to reproduce this vulnerability. First, log into the platform, go to the dashboard, insert this as the expert. So you insert this in the import. So for attachment, I can add some kind of a screenshot, but for the moment, I'm not going to attach this screenshot, but we can say that how this vulnerability can be reproduced in the dashboard. So as the impact, I will add this information. What kind of threat risk to the target? So I can say the vulnerability can be exploited to obtain access tokens, which leads to complete account takeover. So the threat level critical. Who else does it affect? The organization, the user, and their data. So once we complete these steps, if I have some kind of screenshot, I can attach here. So with this information, I'm going to submit this report. Here we can see. Now I'm submitting this report to Bug0. So this is the hacker's inbox. You can see that this is the report that I have added here. So once we log into, let's refresh this. Once we log in from the organization perspective, the organization would see that there is a new report. It's called XSS vulnerability in Bug0 dashboard. So this is how you are going to receive the vulnerability report. So first, we can see that how the vulnerability is reproduced. If there is some kind of attachment, you can see that as well, and we can see the impact here. So first, you can say that in this report, we usually try to say this to all the organizations. Even you receive hundreds of reports, you don't have to worry about it. Just first thing you have to do is you have to acknowledge the report. For you, usually as the Bug0 support, as the organization's handler, we would say thank you for the report. We will validate the report and get back to you soon. So this is the most important aspect when I mention when I mention here tips to keep receiving reports. One of the best tips that I can give you is continuous engagement with the hacker. So if the hacker see that you have immediately acknowledged that there is a report, and you don't have to actually worry about validating the report as soon as possible. But the best thing you can do is acknowledge the report first, so that hacker knows that you are acknowledging the report. So some of the feedback that we get from our hacker community as well, like some organizations, they quickly engage them, and they are really happy about it. So even before we are giving some kind of bounty to the hacker, they are really enjoy that the organization is constantly engaging with those hackers. So now the hacker knows that the organization has viewed this report and they have acknowledged it. So from your side, now you have to do is validate the vulnerability. So now you know the hacker has submitted the report. Now you have the ability to reproduce the vulnerability from your side. You can forward this vulnerability report to your own internal software developer team or your testing team to validate this report and see whether the vulnerability is actually in the software or not. So once you validate the vulnerability, you can say this to the hacker that yes, there is this vulnerability. Thank you for this identifying vulnerability, and we will be triaging this vulnerability. So once we validate this vulnerability, the next step is to triage the vulnerability. When I say triaging means you get like hundreds of bug reports. So you validate these 100 reports, but you have 2 developers from your side. So you need to see which vulnerable reports should be fixed first. So the basic idea behind triaging is give the priority to the most important vulnerability report. So when you, after you validate the report, let's say we validated the report, and we will triage this report and get back to you. So for this, we have add a reference ID. This for like we collect this is for your own future references. You can, for our own, in our bug zero site, we use this feature to track the issues. So for this, we usually use our GitHub platform, our own private repository. So if someone has created a bug bounty, vulnerability report and submit that to us, we will definitely, if the vulnerability is reproduced and it's validated, once we triage it, we create a separate issue for that vulnerability in GitHub platform. So we add that issue ID here. So let's say https github.com/ our organization, let's say B, then issues 112. So in that way, we have a method to track the vulnerability report and the issue related to it. So once we add this information, we can change the report state. You do not have to worry about the issue ID. It is not visible to hacker. It is only visible to your own internal program who manage the program, but not available to the hacker. So you can add some kind of private information that won't be visible to the hacker. So now we have triaged the vulnerability. Now the next step is from your side, from the organization point of view, you have to fix this vulnerability. So what you can do is you can give your this vulnerability report to your software development team, your security experts, if in-house experts, and testing team, and so you can ask them to fix this vulnerability. If we try this vulnerability in the as the most given the most priority, you can ask them to fix this vulnerability as soon as possible. So once we fix the vulnerability, the next step is to ask the vulnerability reporter, the hacker, to retest the vulnerability so that if the vulnerability is fixed or not. So now we will ask the hacker to, we have fixed vulnerability from our side. Please check if it is fixed from your side. So we usually name this as a retesting request. So for this demonstration, the time difference between this message and this message is like a minute, but in reality, this can take like 2-3 months. The thing is that like some vulnerabilities takes more time to fix and we need to push it to the staging servers and retest it from the your internal users, and we need to like finally we have to publish this to the and promote this fix to the production servers. So once the fix is in the production servers, only the hacker can retest it. So there is no problem. This there are some kind of a delay between these two messages, but we usually encourage you to, from the organization perspective, to write some kind of a comment like we are still fixing this vulnerability and thank you for your interest, something like that, to keep the hacker engaged. So when finally now the hacker sees this, let's take this. Now the hacker knows that the vulnerability has fixed. Usually when you submit this kind of program, and when you receive these vulnerabilities, you would see that hackers will ask you any updates you can. I will show you some kind of an example, a real example. Hacker would ask you about updates. So now the hacker knows that this vulnerability is fixed from the organization perspective, and now the hacker is retesting. So for the moment I am retesting, and now I see that vulnerability has fixed from the user perspective as well. So I say it is fixed now, can close the report. So now we know that from our organization perspective, we know that the vulnerability is fixed from both sides, so we can close the report. So when we close the report, there are few types you can select. First, if a vulnerability report is fixed, when we are closing, we can say the vulnerability is fixed. But the other parts are used when we are, let's suppose some vulnerability is reported by a hacker. You validate the vulnerability, but that vulnerability is actually negligible. Something like, let's say, some people would add some kind of very I'm not good. I'm not trying to say that any vulnerability is negligible, but some people have to select out of 100 vulnerabilities. You have to focus on first 5 vulnerabilities when we are prioritizing. For the last vulnerabilities in the list can be considered as negligible. So you can say that these vulnerabilities, you can close the report as no problem, and then close the report, and hacker will acknowledge it. So if we close a vulnerability as no problem, you don't have to pay some kind of a bug bounty. But if we want, we can like give some kind of a bug bounty to appreciate the effort of a hacker, but we usually don't do that. And if there is some report is a duplicate, you can close the report as duplicate. And if you see that some kind of a vulnerability report is not relevant to your platform, suppose you have some kind of a WordPress website, there are thousands of tools and plugins to check if your WordPress site is have this kind of separate vulnerabilities. So these hackers will try to use these tools to find vulnerabilities. So they would use these tools to find a vulnerability, but in fact in your application you don't have this kind of vulnerability, so you can close the report as irrelevant. And finally, some hackers will add like spam reports, but you don't have to worry, be this as a precaution. But in so far in our experience, we haven't received any spam reports, because we have very competent and very competitive hackers in our platform. They do not waste anyone's time with spam reports. They usually they create very high quality reports to the bug bounty programs. So in this way, Let's close this report as fixed. Let's say the reported vulnerability is fixed, and now we'll close the report. So the report is closed. So we have completed the read test step and we have closed the report. So now comes one of the important aspects in the bug bounty cycle. We have to award some kind of a bug bounty to appreciate the hacker. So for that, we usually communicate with organizations as bug zero and your organization. We will mention some kind of a eligible bounty so that you can select grant rewards and you can select bounty. Let's say we are for this cross-site scripting vulnerability, we will award 10 USD dollars. So let's say for grant rewards bounty, we set 10 USD dollars. So let's suppose for this report, we are awarding USD 10. Thank you for your making our systems more secure. So in that way, we can grant the rewards. When you are granting the reward, hacker will get some kind of notification that they will receive USD 10. So finally, now we can see that we have completed the bounty as well. And then the hacker will see that thank you for the reward. You can disclose the report. So finally, when the hacker is asked, requested for public disclosure, uh, we can disclose the report. So there are two kinds of report disclosure: full disclosure or summary disclosure. If you have some kind of a very critical vulnerability and you need only to give some kind of a summary about the vulnerability and how the vulnerability was fixed, then that you are going to disclose it, you can add a summary. You can write the summary here. This is the summary. And then you can request disclosure. Or if you need, you can disclose the full report. So in this example, I will disclose this report as full. So I will say we will disclose the report. So I'm requesting disclosure full. So finally, in the final step, we can disclose the report. We can confirm or cancel. We have added this step for like for security purposes. We need like for the first, you can request for request disclosure status, and then even if you change your mind, if you want to like change your mind to not you are not going to disclose this report to the public, you can still cancel here and click the submit here. So in this example, I will confirm disclosure. So you don't have to add some kind of message, but if you want, we can add here. For this example, I'm not going to add anything. We are just going to disclose this report. So finally, this report is public. We can move to zero feed and see the report is in public domain. In here, you can see the messages here, the notifications, so that we are keeping our participants engaged, and you will receive emails as well. So in this report is completely public now. You can see this report is public. The report title is XSS vulnerability in Bugzilla dashboard. The state is disclosed, and the severity here, and the visibility, and it has the asset and the weakness and the bounty. For this report, we haven't awarded any swag, so it mentions here that there is no swag for this report. So in here, you can see the vulnerability report description and impact, and the comments here. You can see the messages back and forth, the Bugzilla organization and the hacker that have commented. And for this, you can add these comments, but for public, for anyone who's not in the organization, they will not able to add any comments. For this, since I am the organization owner, I can add some kind of comment, but for others, this will be disabled. So let's, as I mentioned earlier, let's see some kind of a real world report. I will add the report link as well. So let's say a good article. Yeah, in here we can see password reset token leak on third-party website. So this is fully disclosed, and we have awarded $60, $67 for as the bounty. We haven't awarded any swag here. So you can read the steps to reproduce this vulnerability, and we have the hacker has entered the impact, and they have attached some kind of a screenshot here. So as I mentioned earlier, the hacker will constantly ask for updates, and in here hacker has entered some kind of a sensitive information, so we have the ability to redact that information as well, so that the public will not know about this. And finally, we have awarded this bounty, and we have closed and disclosed this report to the public. So I will add this link here so that you can go to yourself. So if we move on to this, now the entire bug bounty cycle is completed. So we move on to here. Now we know how to register and how to setting up a bug bounty program, and we know what is a program policy, and we know what is a program scope, and we know how to handle vulnerability reports. And now we are moving on to the most important part, the tips to keep receiving reports. So as I mentioned earlier, the most important thing that constant engagement. So even if you don't have time to fix this vulnerability as soon as possible, so you just have to do it, add some kind of a comment in the report saying that we are working on this vulnerability, fixing this vulnerability, and please bear with us, and we will update you soon. So the hacker will know that you are working on their report, trying to fixing that vulnerability. So when we are working with multiple reports, we can say that in each report we can say that this vulnerability is fixing in these days, we are testing these days, we are like working on these vulnerabilities, trying to fix it. So in that way, the hacker knows that you are not ignoring their reports, but also you are working on their reports as well. So the best advice that I can give you is keep constant engagement with the bug bounty hunter. And the next one is you can give some kind of swags. So once every month we can we from Bug Zero we usually give out swags, like we give out t-shirts, or we can give out stickers, laptop stickers. So hackers usually really enjoying these things. If I'm giving some kind of a real world example, in the Red Bull bug bounty program in HackerOne, they give out Red Bull packages for the bug bounty hunters as bounty. So they are really enjoy that. And some government bug bounty programs, if I have the time I would show you some kind of an tweet that some hacker has said that in I think some government bug bounty programs in European countries, they give out t-shirts. So the hackers are really proud to wear that, like they have found vulnerabilities in their government websites. So things like that, we have to keep constant engagement using messages and giving out swags and giving out t-shirts, laptop stickers, things like that. Some bug bounty programs give out mugs as well. So in that way, we are not saying that this program is has like fixed all vulnerabilities. We are constantly engaged and evolving our programs and constantly engaging with using. We usually from our platform side, we create some kind of marketing campaigns to remind our participants, our bug bounty hunters, to there are these vulnerability bug bounty programs, vulnerability disclosure programs, so that you can engage with them. So we do our part from our side, and from the organizations, we request that you read their reports and comment and contact them as soon as possible. So I think we have around another 30 minutes, so I can go over a demonstration about a live hacking demonstration. So I can say that when we are discussing about hackers and web developers, in my opinion, and in most of the people I know, the opinion is like a web developer should be a hacker and a hacker should be a web developer. So these are interchangeable roles. When we are developing web application, we must think like a hacker. We should think out of the box. So in order to avoid avoid issues in hacking, we have to think ahead of the hacker. So one of the best way to do is like think like a hacker. So first I will discuss about identifying vulnerabilities in web applications, and then I will discuss about what is an exploit, and I will discuss about how to exploit a vulnerability in a perspective of an hacker, and I will discuss about in a perspective of organization how to avoid this vulnerability exploitation. So in this web app hacking demo, I will demonstrate some kind of a real world system that I created for my own, using my own credentials, using my own servers. It's hosted on my own private servers. So by doing this hacking demonstration, I am not hurting anyone. I'm not violating any rules because it's a testing example. This is done for educational purposes, and the hacker is my own account, and the victim is also my own account. So there won't be any problems with that. Basically, no one is getting hurt. So I'm going to follow these simple steps. First, I will pinpoint the vulnerability. Then I will write some kind code. Then I will select the victim. For this example, the victim is also myself. Then I will select a mode of communication. We are going to ask the victim their password. For this demonstration, I will use email as the mode of communication. Then after that step, we have the victim's password or the access token. So now we have the full control of the victim's account. So I like basically say like tell this idea about learning how to hack someone's accounts or hack some kind of someone's web applications. The we have this knowledge today. You are learning this kind of knowledge from the organization perspective and from the hacker's perspective. We should not use this knowledge to do any harm. So the basic rule of thumb is do no harm with the knowledge you gain. So finally, after all of these steps, I will give out some kind of what I will talk about the learned lessons. What have we learned today, and how we are going to move forward from here. So I will now start this. I think we can close this. We can close this as well. So for this purpose, I have created a vulnerable web application. This is a deliberately created for this demonstration. This is a vulnerable application by design. So this link can be accessed by yourself as well. So do not enter any personal or sensitive information here, because this is created only for demonstration purposes. So for this, I have created two accounts, hacker's account and the victim's account. But for the simplicity of this demonstration, I will use the hacker's account as the victim's account as well. So we know that if we can have the access to one account, we have that in the same using the same methodology, we can obtain the access token from the victim as well. So I think this message is from the last session. So let's clear this message. So now this is your web application. You think this web application is secure. So let me go over how this is done. So we have this two users, hacker and the victim. So hacker knows the victim, but victim doesn't know about the hacker. I will tell you how the hacker is going to know about the victim. So the mode of communication between these two counterparts is email. For this demonstration, I'm not going to talk about how we are going to obtain a victim's email. So it's like there are several ways to obtain someone's email. So in this example, let's say I have the victim's email. So now, as a hacker, we are going to see if this web application has several vulnerabilities. So as the first part, we are going to try to find vulnerabilities in this web application. So once we see some kind of a input box, we usually do is we try to check whether there are some kind of cross-site scripting vulnerability. So we can try this. As I mentioned in the vulnerability report that I submitted, we can check for vulnerabilities here. You can check here. Yes, if this message is popped up in this web application, it means there is a cross-site scripting vulnerability in this web application. So we can use this and obtain the access token from the victim. But as good hackers, I mean, not as in the sense like they are nice people, but as a competent hacker, we have to see there are other vulnerabilities or if there is other instance of the same vulnerability. So we need to do what we need to do is we need to try to give some kind of inputs in this field and try to obtain some kind of proof that there is other ways of vulnerability. So we are going to type these some kind of gibberish in this here. So nothing happens, no problem. We have numbers. So what I'm doing is typing manually these inputs, but this is like very boring. You can automate this. How to automate this will be discussed. You can you can use the web suite, or I think if you tune into our previous sessions, you can see how to use web suite discussed by Isuru. So for the moment, I will just add things in my hand. So we tried text, we tried numeric numbers. Then we can try like adding some kind of emoji. So let's lower. Yes. Since I have created this platform, I know there is this message. This platform is not going to accept emojis. So from the hacker's perspective, they tried to add emoji as an input, but there is some kind of message. The message says the message should not contain emojis. So you can try it several times how it works. The best way, if a platform is not accepting something, like they are rejecting some kind of input, the the basic thing that hackers will do, like they try to do the same thing thousands of hundreds of times, like in several frequent ways, so that it might they are trying to see if trying to give the same input over and over again to try to break the system. So let's try to do that from our end as well. Let's try to input the same message and see what is happening. So if we try to input the same thing, and we can, if we have a close look in this address bar, we can see that that address bar is changing very quickly. So we can check if this message, why this address bar is changing. For this purpose, I have created Google Chrome extension to see Chrome history 5 minutes back, since we are working on this platform for around 5 minutes. Let's see what is here. Yes, now we can see that there is some kind of the developer has used this thing called query params to update the website. So you can see that the query param is error, and the message is the message should not contain emojis. So if we can check what is the message, the message says the message should not contain emojis. So if we move on here, we can see that it says the message should not contain emojis. So now we have this kind. This is a very good finding for the hacker. They know that they can. The developer has used these query params to update the inside of the platform. So now we try to see that if this message is accepted by anything outside of the platform. So let's try to change this message. Let's say this is a sample message. Now we have added a custom message. Yes. By trying this, we know that this platform is not sanitizing the input, and it just accept anything that is on the address bar. So we can see this is a simple message is shown on the website. So now we are going to use this information to identify if there is another vulnerability in this platform as well, cross-site scripting, but in another way. So for that, this as well, we are going to use this a simple POC. We are not going to harm anything. We are just going to check if there is a vulnerability. So yes, as we suspected, there is a cross-scripting vulnerability in the address in when we are adding the vulnerable code in the address bar as well. So now as hackers, as competent hackers, we have found that the same vulnerability in two ways. Now we know this vulnerability can be, the same vulnerability can be exploited in two different ways. So we can see how the hacker is going to exploit this vulnerability. For this, we will use the mode of communication, the email, to contact victim, and we will use this cross-site scripting vulnerability to obtain the access token, and the victim will give that to us willingly. How we are going to send an email, that a convincing email? So there are two things that I want to discuss. The first thing is email spoofing, and the second thing is email phishing. Spoofing means impersonating some other's email as your own email, and email phishing means some kind of a phishing context in the email and trying to use the interaction from the victim to get some kind of an advantage for yourself. So in this example, I'm not going to show you how to spoof someone's email, but I'm going to use my own email to my own email. I will use two of my emails to demonstrate this, and I will use some kind of example phishing email to get the interaction from the victim. So as the hacker who is going to see gather information about the website itself, the hackers, another part is they are going to observe the victim as well. The victim doesn't know about the hacker, but the hacker knows everything about victim. Why I'm claiming that hacker knows everything about the victim? So I follow the victim. uh, this information I'm sharing today, you should take it with a pinch of salt, and you should not follow this for do any harm to others. But let's say I know the victim. I know what he or she, what they like. Let's say the victim is a big fan of Batman. He shares everything, he or she shares everything uh, related to Batman in Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. It's public, so we know the hacker can see it publicly that the victim is sharing Batman's post. So the hacker knows that the victim would most definitely engage with the email that is mentioning Batman or DC Comics. So the hacker would create some kind of spoofing email related to DC Comics or Batman, and they would create a phishing email, a very creative and attractive email, saying that the hacker is impersonating these DC Comics, and they will share this kind of phishing email to the victim and ask a victim to click a link, and then by the action of clicking a link, the victim will willingly give the access token to the hacker. So for this, let's see the demonstration. So for that, I have created this my own servers so that there won't be any problem. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about this because these are my own servers. I am just creating an exploit. That is the step that I mentioned as writing the code. This is like some kind of an advanced JavaScript exploit, but these things are just create. This code is written only by observing the web application. These are not very hard things to find in the web application. So if you go to networks and application tab, you can read the local storage, the session storage, the index DB. You can see that the access token is here. Any web application, if you visit this, if you visit the application and the Firebase log, if this application is a Firebase, you can see that they store the access token here. So if this works for me, it will work for anyone. So you can find this access token here. So with that knowledge, we use that knowledge to steal the access token. So in here, what I'm trying to do is we are going to send this link. This whole chunk of code is a link. So even if you don't understand, even if I don't understand this code, your computer will definitely understand this. So we will ask the victim to click on this link, and once they click on the link, the XSS vulnerability in your system, in your web application, will allow this link to execute on your web application context, and they will obtain your access token, and it will send to my own server. This is my own server. Once we send the information here, and I just added my own server's link, so that nothing harm is done. Everything is mine. The account is mine. The access token is mine. I'm just trying to obtain my own access token. So once we've done that, let's move on to the next part. The next part is we are going to create a fake email, so that this is my temporary email, so that no harm is done to anyone. So I will create a temporary I will create a message here. So let's say that the receiving message will be from DC Comics, and the subject will be DC Comics Batman Special Edition. So we say we will the DC Comics will send you a special link to reserve a special Batman edition, comics edition. So you are a very big fan of Batman comics, so you would definitely click this. You will see some kind of an ugly email here, but when hacker is contacting you, this will be very much convincing, and this will be very attractive, and you would definitely click it. If you are not suspect, if you do not suspect this email, you would definitely click on this. So I have sent the email. Let's hope it will receive in time. Let's wait for a few moments. I think yeah, you can see. If you can see clearly, I don't think you can see, but I can see the link. It has this exploiting this link, but you don't actually, we don't really care about what's in this link. We just if we see this thing, we would definitely click it. So let's see if our servers are accepting. Yes, it's working. So let's, now you are the victim. In here, I just use my own email and my name. Here it says my name, but when you are receiving this email from a hacker, you would definitely get an spoofed email. So it says the subject is DC Comics Batman Special Edition. You would get some kind of a very attractive email here. So you are happy, you're excited, you click on this link without thinking twice. So now you don't really care about what's on the address bar, and you don't really care about what's happening here. As the victim, you are really, you are not not used to these things, not used to these kind of things. So you ignore this, you would cut, you would click on this close link. So there's nothing wrong in this platform. You don't see anything change here other than this error message. I mean, I'm speaking from my own personal experience, and you would have this experience as well. You would see some kind of error message popped up when log into some kind of systems, and you would dismiss them without thinking twice. So, but under the hood, the hacker has already stolen your access token. So let's see here. Yes, actually, my own server has collected your access token. So in this web application, I have used JSON Web Token as the authentication token. So once we have a JSON Web Token, what we usually do is, what an hacker will do is, they will use this a free website called jwt.io. I will share this link with you as well. So by using this tool, we can decode this access token and see what is inside it. So we know the user ID here. So we know the user ID is here. So we know the user's email, and we know exactly this is the access token of the victim. For right now, I am acting as the hacker and acting as the victim as well. So if we are changing the scenario, we can see that the same thing can be done to a victim's an actual victim as well. So now we have the access token. We can stop here, but now now I'm writing as the victim. Nipuna. I like Batman. So this is the victim's message. He doesn't know that his account has been hacked, but as the hacker, we have the access token. Now let's change this access token to something different, just to show that we have hacked the victim's account. So for this, I will use the Firebase APIs, and to access the Firebase APIs, I just used Postman. You can use any other tool. For the simplicity and ease, I used Postman. So I completed the access token. So I had access token as the authentication mode, and I use the user ID here from what we are obtaining from the decoded JW token, and I'm going to change this here. Now we are going to add this message: I am the victim, I got hacked. And let's add this, and I don't like Batman. So if everything goes well, so hopefully when we click on this send, we will get a message says HTTP 200 OK. It means the Firebase servers doesn't care who is going to send this message, as long as we have a valid access token. So Firebase will think that this is the actual owner of this web application, the web account, not the application. So let's try to click this send button and see. Yes, as we suspected, the Firebase servers has written as 200 OK. So we know if we go to the website, now the website, the web account message like my name is, I am the victim, I got hacked and I don't like Batman. So let's go to the website and let's see. Yes, now the hacker has the complete control of your application, your account, and we have completed the entire hacking cycle. So can say that it's got hacked, and we use these technologies. We use email to contact the hacker, and we used two of the same vulnerability to exploit, but we used only one instance, and we used email spoofing, and we used email phishing to obtain the victim's access token. So that is the entire hacking cycle. So now we have completed the previous steps. Now it's the time to discuss what have we learned today. So when we are thinking as a hacker, they will always think about how a web application works. They will always go check on the applications tab, and they will go on to storage, session storage, local storage, things like that. They will try to see what is happening there. So always remember to hide, like encrypt or hide those important access tokens, passwords, or things like that from the application or local storage. And another thing, now we have talked about the from the organization perspective, but from a general person, as our participants who are real world people who can interact with the internet, who definitely get emails from people. So when we are getting some emails, we would definitely check whether if this email is coming from uh, people who they trust. If you are suspecting some email is coming from some kind of a spammer or malicious actor, you should not click any links. So like try to avoid clicking unknown click links, and also try to check whether who's this email coming from. When sometimes email spoofing people, the hackers use like some kind of a different let me give you some kind of example, like you can see that adidas.com is sending this kind of a message, but the spoofer can send this message. I'm just so this is a hypothetical situation. I don't think you can do this actually, but you have to check whether this and this are two different things. Most definitely this one would be from a spoofed email. So that's some of the things that I wanted to cover within this 2 hours. So I hope you have gained some kind of an interesting knowledge about how to secure web applications and how to be safe in using emails and generally working with the internet. So now I think we can, if you have some kind of questions, I think you can add them in the chat, and you can ask any kind of question. We would have like 10 minutes for questions, and after that we can move on to the last segment of today's session. You can ask any questions in the chat. So if we don't have any questions, I think Isru, you can start your session as well.
Okay. So let me share my screen. Okay. Hello everyone. I'm Isro, and today I'm going to talk about how I'm going to show you how to like to getting some of the known vulnerability reports, and I will analyze them, and I will show you how they find it, and how much boundary they have paid for that, and finally I will talk about some uh, web hacking, how to like how I will give an introduction to web vulnerabilities. Then I will finally I give you introduction to web hacking tool called WebSuite. So 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 I will first start with bug zero. So we have a zero feed here. In here, we have some reports or submit disclosed. So I will select some of them and explain some of it. So for example, if I take this one, so this report, and a hacker found that there's in when you report a vulnerability, there's been like the all the parties that are involving here, their email addresses has been leaked on the email. So the CC header on the email, and it get disclosed. So everyone who in this involved in this report, their email address will getting disclosed. So uh, then so I'll show you like some other reports as well. So this one, so this one that I found on one of the program, it's there's a when we reporting this, we have a program called Web Telescope here, and when you reporting, there's an option to like report websites to it, and so we can like validate it. So I'll show you. So it's loading. So basically what I did was I found an IDOR attack. So whenever like we creating a report, we pass a user ID. So if I change this user ID to some other user, then I was able to report this as that user. So this is pretty much an access control issue. So I reported into bug zero, this telescope program, and for that I got $27 for this. So there's so many reports that you can read on disclosed report, and I think if I go here, I'll show you that there's so many reports that we haven't disclosed yet, and there are so many critical, I think, reports in here that we haven't still disclosed. Some of them are still fixing and still needs to be disclosed. So for developer perspective, I'll show you some of the other reports that has been found on other bug bounty platforms. So first I will discuss this one with when a researcher found an SSRF issue on a Google cloud project. So what he basically did was that there was a Google there was a Google service called project. I think it was a cloud platform thing. So in there they had they gave regular users, so whoever come to the website can test their product. So they had some kind of like a portal, so you can test the Google product from there. And so basically what happening is the Google sending all the requests through a proxy in order to like so because it's a testing, like a demo thing, so they had some kind of proxy. So I think he also had a YouTube video for this. He explained all this. So he basically did was okay, so here's I think. So all the requests is like, let's say I view some report, and then everything is go through this link, so to like a proxy, and through the proxy it goes to the Google server, and they adding this additional authentication token. So so he was able to actually edit this this URL, this so they have already given the Google server link to here, but he was able to bypass it using his own server, and he was able to get the authentication token and access to these internal Google projects. So yeah, this was a pretty huge issue, I think, in the Google side, and they paid I think for him a really good amount of bounty for this. So the point is like when we developing applications, like as a developing applications, it's like we sometimes use these type of URLs, like we need to get some third-party content, so we add some external, like, let's say a parameters for like URL or something. So even like let's say I want to like include some file from from a different website, or from let's say Google Drive or something, I give a URL, right? So if we did not validate it properly, what happens is then when we requesting it, it can goes uh, to attacker's website, and he can actually take control of the he can actually view the what requests he visiting. Also, the another really huge impact of SSRF is if you're using like AWS, then AWS have a link or a endpoint called a metadata endpoint. So if attacker was found an SSRF, and he can just try to hit this endpoint, and it will give you a refresh token for the AWS. So it will give you like credentials for the AWS instance. So yeah, so the thing is, this endpoint can be only accessed from the AWS instance. But if we found like an SSRF issue, then attacker can easily obtain these credentials. And yeah, this could like even in the Google cloud platforms. So another thing is, like, as developers, we might have some filters for this. Like, we check we include some regular expression to like only check, okay, so let's I only allow my domain, the domains that I listed here have access to this. But the attackers can still find a way to like bypass these filters. That's what he did here. So the Google already had a filter on this endpoint, but he was able to bypass with very simple payload here. Like, he added this backslash, and I think he added in here somewhere. He was able to like get it really with a very small payload, and he was able to bypass the filter. So yeah, so when we like developing like applications, we tend to like focus more into like vulnerabilities like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, and other, like, say, similarity injection stuff. But there can be other vulnerabilities that is not, we don't like spot them like when we developing it, but to like to get an idea to like to find them, I think it's best to use like bug bounty platform, because about Google actually had bug bounty platform. He reported it into the Google. So yeah, so he reported on like 2021. So I'll show you another one here called mass assignment. So this is also occurs. Mass assignment bug is another issue in web applications. It's like, let's say I have a profile page. I will explain it to this example. Let's say I have a profile page, and if then the web application only allows me to edit my name, and say my email address, my uh, phone number, or whatever they like fields in there. But let's say this, so in code level, we tend to like use like a model. If we use like a database model, then there's still going to be parameters. Like let's say there's a role for user. So when I'm updating, I'm just regular user. But what there's a, let's say, field called isadmin. So this field is not disclosed on the updating form. So there's a profile page, and then when I edit the profile page, this parameter is not listed, because it should not be, normal user should not be able to change this parameter called isadmin. But if this application is vulnerable to mass assignment, what I can do then is to actually change this parameter to, let's say there's a parameter called isadmin. then I can change it to true, and I can actually get admin account. So this is a common vulnerability that can be discovered on applications. I have found some of them, these kind of issues as well. So when we testing, like, okay, so yeah, it's really good to like only like always validate the request that like when we like getting inputs from the user, it's always good to like validate them one by one before we actually storing them, because yeah, we should never trust the data coming from the user end. So otherwise this could lead to even account takeovers. So yeah, that's so what it did was I can get an RCE or command execution on the server just with a simple just one header. Just one header, I don't have to do anything. If the server actually running this specific PHP version, I can just include this header and then actually get RCE, remote code execution. So this hacker reported this bug. So I'll show you here, I think. So here you can see this is the HTTP request that he's sending, and you can see in the header it says the PHP version, which is PHP 8.1.0 there. So then you can just, if it is that version, then you can just simply add this header, like in the user agent header, you can just add this command right here called 0 id and pass it the command that you want to execute, and it will all the vulnerabilities that they have in all the time. So so if we use like a really old version or vulnerable version, this could lead to potentially these sort of issues. So it's always good to so it's not easy to developer to detect this sort of issues, because it's just I think it's keep the vulnerability databases keep updating every day, and yeah, so it's better to have someone testing your application or consistently. It's to track these kind of issues. And I also want to talk about something called Log4j. I think you might heard this Log4j. This was came, I think, in 2021 vulnerability. So this was a really massive vulnerability came in 2021. The affect so many Java applications. So so many like huge companies like from Apple to all the other companies, they had so many vulnerable host endpoints through to Log4j. So 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 this was a command execution vulnerability. If it is a complete, if you completely, if you're able to like completely exploit it, then you can get a command execution on a server. So so what I wanted to show you is that this is a HackerOne report on Log4j shell, and you can see that they received more than 300 reports per day just regarding this only this Log4j vulnerability on that time. So you can see how much systems were impacted. So let's say there was no platform so they could report to, then what will happen is that if the attackers were able to like find them first, and they could actually cost those companies millions of dollars, because yeah, because this is a very critical issue. They reported to the bug bounty program, and they probably send them their highest bounty amount, but they also saved like so many data leakage and money from actually having a bug bounty program themselves. So yeah, so I think a lot of systems are now safe, but there are still cases that log4j can be existed. Some filters, I think some bypasses has been found. So yeah, so to like if you have like a program listed, like a bug bounty program, let's say, like have like a security defense system or something, then you can actually prevent from these vulnerabilities. Because if your system have one of these things, and then it's really crucial to like fix them immediately, because this could like impact the organization very high level. So I will also explain about something called race condition. So I'm explaining some of the bug classes that actually in can be in your web applications as well. So the thing that I'm not talking about, like SQL injection and stuff, so like some of the vulnerabilities, because when we like working with the framework, there is already some protection against SQL injection and cross-site scripting and XML entity injection, so vulnerabilities like that. But there's still possible, because the cross-site scripting is one of the most, I think, one of the most common vulnerabilities that you can find. But if let's say you like using React or something, and then they have protection against that, and like if using Node.js or Laravel, then they have their own protection against SQL injections. So so that's why I want to talk about. So there are but other vulnerabilities that can be existed in the system. So one of them is race condition. Race condition is where that you can let's say there's a redeem option. That this in this report, this hacker reported he was able to redeem multiple gift cards, and with this race condition issue. So what he did was, there was an endpoint, and on this website there was an endpoint that you could redeem through a gift card. And then with race condition, what you can do is you can send this, you can get this payload and send it like let's say 100 at the same time. If you, there is possibility there, I think in with HTTP2 and all, we have something like a tunneling system. I don't really remember the call, but there's a system that you can use, which will allow you to send requests simultaneously. So there's a plugin in I'll explain about the burp in later. But so if you send this redeem request at the same time, like 10 times, and you can actually redeem this gift card 10 times. So why this occurs? Sometimes the synchronization, like when the request is sending, sometimes web application is failed to synchronize these requests. So since that they will happen same time, and then it will going to accept it. It will accept it and it will happen. So race condition can be also occur in like let's say social media. So if I say there's a post, then if I like it and then like the post, then if there's a race condition, then I can just get free likes to that post. So yeah, that's one of the, this could lead to really huge issue. That you can see this now, this getting gift cards for free, it's actually a huge issue. It's a critical bug. So yeah, so he was able to actually got money from it as well. So I will explain another one called SVG, stored excesses. So we all so like when we developing like applications, like we have sometimes a file upload. So let's say for file upload, image upload, and if we did not block like some of the file types, this could also lead to some potential issues. So let's, for example, allowing SVG files could leads to cross-site scripting on SSRF. So the thing is, SVG files inside it, you can actually define JavaScript. We can actually include JavaScript inside SVG files, and through that you can actually get a vulnerability, cross-site scripting vulnerability for that. So you can see there's this in this report, he found it. And normally in web application, we do include some filters to, like, let's say only allowing to like upload PNG files or JPG file or things like that. But there are still possible ways that you can bypass it and still upload the file. So if we did not properly validate the file, if we only validate the extension, then I don't think it's going to be enough, because there are so many bypasses that you can do to that. So you can just get even you can upload a PHP file. Let's say you just have a PHP application, and then if you only validate the extension, then you can actually, attacker can even upload an PHP file and actually get the command shell on that. So here you can see he bypassed it, I think, using a content type header. And so yeah, the post. So here's like there he actually given like a SVG file into it, and he first I think it just got denied, but he was able to bypass it. We think that, and got there are other reports that actually include a lot of bypasses for cross-site scripting. So for cross-site scripting, I'll say so let's say we had implemented like protection against it, and we add like let's say a firewall, let's say add a header like CSV header. So even though there are ways to actually bypass CSV headers, I think there are websites now online there for like to actually find CSP issues. It's like so see in the CSP headers as well, you have to specify, you have to like allow some website to still load. So in CSP headers, what you do is basically you can deny and you can allow what script or what parts of web application, what attributes should execute, what application should allow and not. So let's say I allow some of the applications. I have a like a server or CDN server or something out there, and a third-party server. So if I can somehow like store malicious JavaScript file on the CDN, then I can bypass the this CSP header. So there are so many ways to bypass that. And also nowadays, because we use a lot of the time, we use firewalls like Cloudflare, Akamai, or AWS CloudFront. Still, they blocks a lot of payloads. They blocks like if attacker just use normal cross-site scripting payloads, and they will not get executed. But still, in actually as we talking, people are actually discovering new filters, new bypasses for these firewalls. So So it's not a good thing to like only rely on firewalls all the time, because it can be bypassed. It's not 100% safe. Web application firewalls, it's not 100% safe to always. It can like guarantee you some level of things, but if it's an really experienced hacker, then he can actually bypass firewalls. Firewall is not uh, giving like 100% protection to your web application anyway. So yeah, so I'll also show you something called this one. Another good issue discuss it's cache poisoning. Cache poisoning is also, as a developers, again, we don't really care about these type of bugs, because they actually can. Okay, someone asked a question here. How can we prevent CSRF token bypass by anti-CRF? Okay, so how do we prevent CSRF token bypass by anti-CRF? So anti-CRF tokens, we should not never like use CSRF token on cookies. So if you rely on if you put the CSRF token on cookies, there are so many ways to bypass it. So let's say you using JSON. So you using a JSON to post requests, you send JSON body. And when you're using JSON body, normally we don't send CSRF token. Sometimes we don't send it. We actually put it on, let's say, cookie. Um, so if that's the case, then you can bypass that. And there are, I think, I remember a way. So there were multiple ways to actually bypass CSRF token in a scale. So let's say your application is using URL encoded, sorry, JSON, and then if also it support for like URL encoded body, then you can then you can just easily bypass that. So the thing is with CSRF, let's say so yes, if you're using URL encoded body, you can actually bypass that as well. Again, anti-CRF tokens should use maybe on headers. It's really secure, I think, is if you're using on headers. And also if you're using JSON, always like include CSRF tokens in a JSON body, not on the cookies. And that can also help you. And also another one point out is that if your application support multiple content types, then also check on that. Also, if it's like support for URL encoded JSON, then implement like security for both of them, because if you did not do it, then attacker can like change the content type and then bypass the CSRF. So always keep that in mind, that check the content type as well. So yeah. So now we'll talk about cache poisoning a little bit. So cache poisoning is another issue that could even lead to a higher critical vulnerabilities. I think there's a hacker here. He has found, I think, close to 40,000 boundaries, I think. Yeah, he was able to find like more than 70 cache poisoning vulnerabilities among many bug bounty programs. So this also we don't really care about as like developers. We just let's say we develop the application, we don't actually think about these type of issues, because the but the attackers are actually, if we know about these vulnerabilities, we can test them. And if there is a misconfiguration on your cache server, they can exploit it. So so in here I will explain like what's happening. So he actually have this entire thing. I will actually leave this into the chat as well if you want to read it more. So So here's like example. Let's say I'll explain like this. So again, let's say I have a profile page. And in the profile page, I have my API token. I have my all my personal information, and I have all my personal information there. And let's say my credit card detail, something, some kind of details are important ones there. So and with the simple kind of payload, I will actually test it on here because I already tested, so I know it's not there. So to actually give it to like misconfigure the changes, you can like find endpoint like this, and then you can give it like end of it, you can like give like CSS or JS, because normally in cache we actually uh, cache the files like HTML and CSS files, JS files. These things getting cached all the time on the cache server. But if our application, like let's say I give like test.css here, and then it's ignore this part and it goes to here, and let's say I go to profile page and I add say test.css, then it will cache that page. Then what happens is whenever the attacker go to that page, and he can actually visit that that profile page to the victim. So this is a really serious issue. Sometimes it could lead to very serious issues. So the modern cache servers actually have some kind of protection against it, but also he also described in this article, he actually described so many ways to bypasses these protections. How you can find cache poisoning in various ways. So yeah, so uh just always just so we don't like actually go think about cache poisoning that much, like these type of bugs, but it's good to like if it's an actual hacker, if it's a bug bounty hunter, then he will test these kind of vulnerabilities on your program, and if there is anything, he will report it to you. So also I will talk about yeah, type juggling. I will talk about as well. So this is also one of the uh, bugs that actually happen, very small misconfiguration on your code when you're writing. Let's see, this is actually bug in happening mostly on PHP. So what happens is just with the simple equal sign, you can occur this bug. So this could lead to very critical issues. So for example, I'll show you one. I'll say, let's say there's a login page, and then you accept the email of the user and then password. So first, let's say for this, I will say that let's first say the application check the user have use email is actually in the database, and then get their record, and then check the password. So let's say the password is checked by password equal that the string that we pass to the web app. But the issue is when you pass two equal signs, PHP does not actually compare it based on the value. It will compare based on the type of the variable. So then what happens is, if I send true, then it will recognize it as an boolean value, and then it will send it as true. So if your application support JSON, right? So then JSON actually have allow boolean values, right? So if it is support JSON, then you can just say password equal so password value to true, then the backend will say, okay, this password is correct and you can log in. So this is a very critical issue. You can find these kind of issues like so many places. These are very common vulnerabilities that you can look for. Type check. So this is, I think here shows the actual code as well. Yeah. So in the check-in, I think I think it's just found on like a known CMS or something. So yeah, it's just in a CMS. So yeah, you can find this kind of issues on really common vulnerability these are. So you can find them on many places. So also I would again go to another one. So another one I want to say is an IDO. So IDO is really common. Another very common vulnerabilities. I think just like process scripting, it's a very common vulnerability. So normally let's when we like have a resource based one like uh, web application, if the web application complexity is huge, then it is very much possible then to have IDOs somewhere in the application, because IDOs can be occur like if you pass like an ID, then let's say I want to get a user's ID, and if I pass an ID, if I let's say I instead of passing my ID, I put someone else's ID into that, then I can, if I can get that person's data, that's actually a really critical bug that could lead to a very higher severity of bug. So there are so many, I think in the past years, so many data leakage happened due to the IDOS issues. So many privacy leakage issues happen due to these IDO issues, because these are really common type of bugs and find on like web applications. So it's not like developers fault to have IDOs, because sometimes we cannot check everything. Like let's say we finish the application, but we can check every single part in there. Like we cannot like sometimes so idols can be like into like large scale. If in a large scale, let's say there's like, for example, let's say 5 or 6 roles in the user roles in there, and then some roles, only some roles if users can access that data. So like that, like testing is really hard, that kind of application. So that's why you need like actual hackers, because they can then like actually create method. There are some tools as well to test them, like these kind of IDO issues very easily. So they can use those to actually identify these type of bugs. So I think we have a small time. I go to the next one. uh, so another one, this one called password reset poisoning using headers. So we don't, also again, we don't think about this stuff, right? So when we implement password reset token, we implement it the most secure ways possible. We add the most complex tokens as possible, but still it can be exploited. Just we using simple header. So you can see here, I think yeah, here is multiple ways to actually do this, but I will explain one here. So in HTTP requests, there are headers that like to tell the web server that which server that we're trying to connect. So normally this is done by a host header. So in the host header, we define which server that we're connecting to. So in the password, when you're generating the password reset token, sometimes as a misconfiguration, we include the header. So we include the host header, we include the, let's say the domain using this host header. if we use host header to actually generate the password reset token, this can also be bypassed, because sometimes if we change the host header to an attacker.com, it can then generate the reset token as attacker.com reset password. Yeah, that's actually very critical, because I can send it to any user. Then if we actually click on that, and then he will redirect to my website, and I can just create the same looking page as this reset token, and then I can actually do a phishing attack, like a phishing type of attack, and I can grab their password. Yeah, that's one way. And also another one is you can bypass, sometimes you cannot change host header, so but there are other headers. Let's say X forwarded for header, there's a header called X forwarded for. It's like sometimes the front end, let's say you have a proxy, a reverse proxy on 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 your website. You have a proxy that filter the requests, and these requests sometimes if you include like X forwarded for header, sometimes they will say, okay, this coming from this head host. So even though you can change the host header, you can actually still use X forwarded for header and then say it's to attacker.com, and you can still perform this attack. So to prevent from this, you should never generate password reset token or verification link or any kind of invite link. This only not only for this, let's say it's just for invitation. So if I want to invite someone, then I can just uh, do same vulnerability, exploit it same way, and then they will receive the attacker.com in their end. So I can just fish someone into my own website. There are other vulnerabilities like request smuggling. This is also a vulnerability that we don't really know about much about as well. Here, the request smuggling also could lead to like getting into like account takeover level risk sometimes. So for request smuggling, I think there's a researcher known as show you I think his name is James Carroll. So he did a whole research about the request smuggling, and he was able to find request smuggling among really large corporation like Netflix, and there's so many other huge companies. He found GitLab, so many other companies. He found request smuggling, and he was able to provide a really high impact on to those programs. So also I want to show about some of the tools. Some of the tools that we can use. So so mostly when we like dealing with web application, the web suite is the best tool, I think, for testing web application. So if you like an organization, then you can buy, like, there's an enterprise edition for that. So it just contain a vulnerability scanner itself. It's not gonna find everything, because it's always like it can find like bugs like IDOS issues and stuff, because those should be tested by manually, like by people. And this can still detect vulnerabilities like cache poisoning issues, the stuff request smuggling issues. There's some vulnerabilities like that, you can detect them. There's a community edition for free usage as well. So this is one of the things that you can use to, as a hacker, you can use Burp Suite. So yeah, Also, I want to point out another way to like find issues on organization is through GitHub. GitHub contain, I think, more than millions. I think it contains more millions of repositories. So from organization, so each organization have a GitHub, and if we like, if let's say like when you're developing, sometimes we include some credentials and some important things into repo, and if we like somehow commit it to the GitHub, and it's going to be there, it's gonna be in that commit, so the attacker can dig into, there are tools for that, so they can dig into those repo and then find out those credentials that you put in. So just to avoid those, always just maybe use a YAML file, or never hard-coded credentials into repos. So if you hard-coded them into actual repositories, you can actually attacker can actually get them very easily using GitHub, because GitHub is free and you can search anything on GitHub. Anyone can just, if it is a public repo, then anyone can go to all the commits there and find out the credentials if there is any. So yeah, not only credentials that you can find like hidden endpoints of an application as well on GitHub. So always just don't put any credentials or anything, any sensitive information into GitHub repos. So yeah, that's that. Yeah, when you're using those kind of, even though not only GitHub, GitLab or any version controlling system, just don't put anything there. Also, there are ways like, if you heard, I think you may heard of like something called Pastebin. Pastebin is one of the it's a public tool for like putting your text file. Sometimes, like let's say we want to share some data, and we put it on the Pastebin and we share it, and we never think about deleting or anything, so it's just gonna be there forever. And an attacker can just use Google just to simply find this kind of hard-coded stuff as well. So don't put anything kind of like that in there. Also, another important one is JavaScript. So uh, JavaScript can contain huge number of data. So if I select one JavaScript, so this JavaScript can contain from credentials to endpoints to so many sensitive data. So never like hard-coded them again, hard-code those into that as well. So there is another way called historical data. So even though you in your newer versions, you remove all the credential. Let's say there's a previously you put like a credentials or something into your application, and then you publish it, then hackers can still like sometimes get those using historical data. uh, so there's something called web archive. Show you this called internet archive calls. So in here, then attackers can just simply search the website they want to test or like get, and then enter it here, and then they can just see the previous records. Through that, they can just get JS files to like anything that in there were listed previously, and they can just find those as well. So that's also to keep that in mind. Just never publish anything, any sensitive data to that. And also, finally, I want to say is that it doesn't matter. Like sometimes we implement the systems very safe into like thinking, okay, it's just no security that can be found there, uh, but actually, as a hacker, that I know that okay, that's not actually true, because systems are, because I'll show you on a platform like HackerOne how much they, and yeah, so okay, I don't really remember. I think you need to be like sign in for this. But you can see here like the companies actually put it in here because GitLab, TikTok, even TikTok is in here listed. Stripe, Shopify, all these companies you can see they pay really good amount of money because let's say just one bug here. I'll say one. So let's say this is a remote code execution bug. So let's say it's not listed as a bug bound program. Then what happens is like if attacker was able to find it and he can find it and he knows, okay, I'm not going to get paid by reporting it to GitLab if they didn't have a bug bounty program, and he might maybe try to exploit it. But if there is a bug bounty program, then they know, okay, I don't have to actually exploit it. I don't have to give it to other people. I can just um, use this to actually I have a program, and then there's no legal issues as well if I report it, and then I can get really good amount of money. So you can see here he earned 33,000 for this report. There are so many other, this is not, you can see there's a Reddit here as well. So all these big companies, it's not just big companies as well listed here. You can see as the US Department of Defense is here. So you can see they also like believing in that the bug boundary, because you know how serious like their security is. But you can see if I go here, I can show you how much vulnerabilities has been. You can see 23,995 reports solved. So let's say, I mean, it's the US Department of Defense. It's if it is secure, I mean, I'm pretty sure they have so many teams actually working on security as well. But if it is resolved like 23,000, you can see that it doesn't matter like how much we put effort to like fix it very safe. There's also going, there's always going to be some kind of vulnerability in the system, and it's better to like actually always have uh, other other help, we have to get all the help we can get on security field, especially. So uh, so those are the things that I want to talk about today. If you have any questions, you can ask on the chat, or you can even talk here this mic as well.
Think we can have around like 10 minutes to for this questions and answers, and then we can wrap up this today's session. So you can ask any questions in the chat. So before we conclude this today's session, I would like to remind you that please fill this form, this feedback form that I posted on the chat. The people who, when you are filling this form, please remember to leave your contact details so that we will contact you with the swags. You will definitely get swags from Bug Zero for commemorating this event. This If you have any questions, you can ask them right now, or if you have some questions at a later time, you can contact us. We have mentioned our email address, support@bug0.io. In the feedback form, you can see that we have added the previous session links as well, the YouTube live stream links. If you want to view these presentation slides, we will add them in the video description as PDF files. You can view them later. I think within today itself, we can share the PDFs as well. Yeah, so it seems like no questions. So thank you very much, dear participants. I hope from Bug Zero, we have given you some kind of informative session today. Very interesting one indeed. So you can share your honest opinion about today's session with the feedback form. If you want some kind of things that needs to be changed from our side, you are very welcome to add them in the feedback form. We will definitely improve ourselves. We are constantly changing ourselves, trying to be better than yesterday. So with that said, I think it's time to conclude today's session. Again, I thank you everyone, dear participants, and I would like to thank all the resource persons from Bug Zero, from itself, Isuru, our founder, Dr. Prima, and I would like to thank everyone who make this possible, make this event, the Global Entrepreneurship Week, possible. So with that said, let's conclude this session, and I'm wishing you all have a rest of the day, a good day. So let's conclude this session. Thank you very much. If you want, you can join tomorrow's session as well. Follow our social media, and we will share the links as well. Thank you very much.